There is a photograph circulating right now that, according to people who were genuinely close to Prince Harry for years, has broken something inside him that may not repair. It is not a scandalous image, it is not a leaked document or a courtroom defeat. It is a picture of a woman holding a newborn baby on a sun-drenched island, and it has done more damage to Harry than every Netflix cancellation, every security ruling, and every tabloid headline combined. That woman is Chelsea Davey, and by the end of this video, you will understand not just why this photograph has devastated him, but the specific chain of choices, exposed and documented by his own biographer, that led to a moment where the life he once described as his deepest desire now belongs to someone else entirely. And you will understand the two chains, one legal, one far more personal and far more frightening, that are keeping him locked inside a life he can no longer pretend to want. But before we get into any of the painful parts, I want to start by saying something that I think gets lost in the noise of royal commentary. I am so happy for Chelsea Davey, genuinely, completely happy for her, because when you see that photograph, the one posted without a publicist or a press release or a carefully choreographed media sequence, just a woman on a sun-drenched island holding a newborn boy with her husband beside her, you are looking at someone who figured it out. She figured out what mattered, she went and built it, and she did not ask anyone's permission or need anyone's platform to get there. That deserves to be said before anything else. The baby is called Finn. He arrived in March 2026, her third child. And according to individuals who have been part of Prince Harry's world for the better part of 2 decades, people whose closeness to him was built on something real rather than manufactured through shared commercial interest, that image has cracked open something that was already fractured. And the people who care about him most are quietly acknowledging that this one may not close again. We are going to take this apart today. The full account, not the version that gets compressed into a headline, the one that requires you to understand who Chelsea Davey actually is, what she and Harry genuinely had, why he was the one who destroyed it, and what the life she has built since reveals when you hold it against the reality Harry currently occupies. And I will tell you now, as someone who has covered royal stories for a long time, this one is different. This one does not have a comfortable resolution for anyone hoping Harry will simply be fine. Let us begin with Chelsea, because nothing that follows makes sense unless you appreciate how remarkably, quietly, thoroughly well her life is going. On the 26th of February 2026, Hello magazine reported that Chelsea had shared her third pregnancy through a simple Instagram post. No orchestrated reveal. No brand partnership, no countdown strategy. Just a photograph of a woman glowing with the kind of unforced happiness that only comes from a life that is working on its own terms. Tatler confirmed on the 16th of March that she had welcomed a son, Finn, joining older brother Leo and sister Chloe. She lives in Mauritius. She and her husband Sam Cutmore-Scott told the Evening Standard in December 2025 that they were making the island their permanent home, a place Chelsea has loved since childhood. They married there privately in May 2022. No camera crews, no documentary deal attached to the ceremony, no monetization of the moment. Sam is a hotelier. He is the brother of actor Jack Cutmore-Scott, and as the National World reported in November 2025, he attended Eton a single year ahead of Prince Harry. The same corridors, the same world of privilege, a completely different set of decisions about what to do with it. He built something real and enduring. And Chelsea runs AYA, the jewelry brand she created entirely from her own talent and vision. No title opened that door. No royal association made it possible. It exists because she is gifted. And I want to pause here as an analyst and say something that I think matters. What Chelsea has done is actually the hardest version of success. She walked away from the proximity to one of the most famous families on earth and built something that stands on its own merit. In the world I cover, that almost never happens. People cling to the reflected glow of royalty for decades. Chelsea simply left, went quiet, and created a life so complete that the photographs speak for themselves without a single caption being necessary. Hold that image clearly, because everything else exists in direct contrast to it. Now the tone changes, because former members of Harry's close circle have stated specifically that the news of Chelsea's third child has, in their words, really emotionally hit home. And that phrase carries more weight than it initially appears. What they are describing is not a man who saw an ex-partner's announcement and felt a passing sting of nostalgia. They are describing a man who looked at those images and saw, in permanent high resolution, the exact future he once described as his deepest ambition when he was still with her. A large family, a home outside the United Kingdom, warmth that is not performed for cameras, freedom that does not require press officers to explain its existence. Harry and Chelsea were together, on and off, from 2004 to 2011. 7 years. That is not a youthful fling. That is a serious, sustained relationship between two people who loved each other in the uncomplicated way that only exists before life has fully reshaped you. Angela Levin, whose biography of Harry remains the most authoritative account of his inner world, written with direct access and published with his cooperation, has been unambiguous. Chelsea was the love of his life. That is not language Levin uses lightly. And during those years, according to people in his orbit, Harry was explicit about what he wanted. Multiple children. A home far from the claustrophobic machinery of formal royal life. He said this to friends. He said it to Chelsea directly. It was not a vague aspiration. It was a specific, repeatedly stated intention. And here is where I need to be honest with you as an analyst. Because what happened next is the part that tells you everything about the pattern that has governed Harry's life since one. And it reflects far less well on him than any version he has ever offered publicly. When Chelsea enrolled at university to study animal conservation, a subject she was deeply passionate about, Harry's response, as Levin documented it, was resentment, not encouragement, not pride. He was cross that she was prioritizing something meaningful to her. He did not visit. He did not do the most basic thing love requires, which is to show up. Instead, according to Levin's account, he was unfaithful, not once, repeatedly, with, in her precise formulation, all sorts of other girls. Chelsea kept reaching out. She kept inviting him. She kept doing what a person does when they want a relationship to survive. And Harry kept declining, citing, with a deficit of self-awareness that now reads as a warning sign for everything that followed, that her university friends were not the right sort of people for him, meaning he considered himself too important to make an effort for the woman he claimed to love most in the world, meaning his comfort ranked above her worth. Chelsea walked. And Levin has stated, without qualification, that responsibility for the ending sits entirely with Harry, not shared entirely. So here is the question I want you to hold. Do you believe Harry has ever, in a quiet room, fully accepted that he was the one who lost Chelsea Davey? Or has he spent the years since reshaping that story inside his own head until the weight of it rests somewhere more comfortable? Because the answer predicts nearly everything that has happened to him since. Now, the children. And this is where the emotional core of this story shifts from painful to genuinely devastating. Chelsea Davey has 3 children. Finn, Chloe, Leo. 3. The large family Harry told his closest friends he wanted above almost everything. The large family he discussed building with Chelsea. The large family she is now building, just not with him. Harry has 2, And what follows is not cruelty in the pointing out, but it is impossible to ignore. Harry has 2 children in part because, after Archie's birth, he began making public statements about climate responsibility, about how 2 was the maximum a person of conscience could justify. His former friends, the ones who had heard the original conversations about the big family, were not merely surprised, they were baffled. Because the man advocating a 2-child limit was the same man who had spoken passionately and specifically about wanting exactly what Chelsea now has. Something between those 2 versions of Harry had moved the goalposts on one of his most deeply held desires, and the people who knew him best had no confusion about where that shift originated. So when those photographs appeared in March 2026, Harry was not simply looking at an ex-partner's happy news. He was staring at a complete accounting of his own choices. The choice to betray when he should have been present. The choice to let pride override love. The choice to announce that the family he once craved was now environmentally irresponsible. Each image was a mirror, and the reflection did not match the story he had been telling himself. But here is something I want to say, as someone who tries to be fair in this work. There is a version of this story where you feel something for Harry. Not sympathy for his choices, those were his, and he owns them, but something close to grief for the waste of it. He had real love in front of him, the genuine article, and he could not see it clearly enough to protect it. That is not a villain's story. That is a deeply human failure, the kind most people are fortunate enough to make in private rather than under the permanent gaze of the entire world. The tragedy is that the failure did not teach him what it should have. Body language analyst Judy James, writing for The Mirror on the 1st of February 2026, identified a conspicuous shift in the dynamic between Harry and Meghan, describing a missed beat quality to their public appearances. That assessment came a full month before Chelsea's pregnancy became public. The fracture was already visible. Video footage from the same period showed Harry repeatedly pulling away from Meghan's attempts at physical contact. Not once, repeatedly, across different events, with a consistency that eliminated any benign explanation. Sources close to the situation have offered context. Harry does not experience Meghan's public gestures as expressions of warmth. He perceives them as displays of ownership, performance directed at the watching world rather than at him. And he has reached a point where he can no longer pretend acceptance of something he experiences as inauthentic. Royal commentators have said it directly. Harry is fracturing in real time. The performative layer has dissolved. What we are watching is not a couple navigating a difficult stretch. It is a man who has exhausted his capacity for pretense. The One Young World Summit in Manchester in September 2022 was, according to Tom Bower, whose book Betrayal remains the most rigorously sourced examination of the Sussex enterprise, the moment something that had been visible privately crystallized in front of a global audience. Meghan stood before world leaders and humanitarian practitioners and used a platform of genuine substance to center herself, her story, her feelings, her journey. The co-founder's daughter, Ella, who had already harbored reservations about extending the invitation, watched the speech and said, in terms that left no room for interpretation, that Meghan had ruined it. And Harry, somewhere in that space, had to watch it happen, knowing it was not going well, powerless to redirect, powerless to intervene. The helplessness of that position, being unable to influence the direction of a life on which he has staked everything, is, according to those around him, part of what is breaking him apart. And now we arrive at the 2 chains I mentioned at the beginning, the ones keeping Harry exactly where he is. The first is the most frightening. In January 2025, Vanity Fair, a mainstream publication with editorial standards and fact-checking processes, confirmed that Meghan's team had shopped a post-divorce book to publishers. The New York Post, Page 6, The Daily Record, and multiple other outlets corroborated it independently. A book about the marriage, about Harry, written after it ends. If you have read Spare, you understand the devastation a memoir can inflict. Spare was Harry writing about his own family. Now consider a book authored by Meghan about Harry, by someone who has witnessed him at his most exposed and most vulnerable, motivated by the dissolution of a marriage and everything that accompanies it. Harry lives with the awareness of what she knows every single day. And that knowledge, according to sources, functions as a chain, one that keeps him precisely where he is, not because the marriage fulfills him, but because the alternative carries costs too vast to calculate. The second chain is legal. California family law would almost certainly award Meghan primary custody of Archie and Lilibet. People around Harry warned him about this before the children were ever brought to the United States. The advice was direct. Do not establish the children's residence there if you want equal footing in any future custody arrangement. He did it anyway. And now, the arithmetic of that decision governs everything. He is not staying because he is happy. He is staying because leaving costs more than enduring. That is not a marriage. That is a negotiated stalemate held together by fear on one side and leverage on the other. The security dispute layers public humiliation onto private anguish. Revec has been conducting a comprehensive review of Harry's case, confirmed by ITV News in January 2026. The political risk of reinstating taxpayer-funded protection for a man who voluntarily left the institution is considered too significant for any minister to champion comfortably. Harry lost a previous legal challenge. He is weighing an appeal. Meanwhile, Netflix has moved from a structured partnership reportedly worth $100 million to a standard first-look arrangement that guarantees nothing. Sources described 2025 as Harry and Meghan's most catastrophic year. The trajectory is unmistakably downward. And here is the detail that brings the entire picture into its sharpest and most unforgiving focus. Chelsea does not miss him. People who know her have confirmed this. She carries no residual grief. She is not in Mauritius replaying alternative timelines. She is exactly where she chose to be, with exactly the person she chose, living exactly the life she deliberately built after making the right decision for herself. The asymmetry of that, his anguish against her peace, his consequences against her freedom, is perhaps the most pointed commentary possible on the choices that were available to both of them and the directions those choices led. I have covered this family for long enough to know that very few stories resolve with real clarity. Most royal narratives stay tangled, ambiguous, open to interpretation from every angle. This one does not. The picture is complete. Chelsea built a jewellery business on her own talent. She found a partner from the same world as Harry who chose to be present and real rather than performative. She moved to an island she loves. She had 3 children. She did not write a book. She did not give interviews about what she survived. She simply lived forward in the direction of what mattered. Harry talked about building that life. He had the woman who fit most naturally into it, and he made the choices that dismantled it. He was unfaithful when presence was what mattered. He was too proud to visit. He was too insecure to honor what was in front of him. And then he told the world the large family he always wanted was now irresponsible to have. His friends have not forgotten what he said. And now, Chelsea has her 3rd child in the warmth of Mauritius in a life that needs no press office to sustain it. Angela Levin confirmed in late March 2026 that Harry is visibly withdrawing from Meghan's touch, expressing regret over lost friendships and presenting body language that radiates discomfort. That is not speculation. It is observed and confirmed across multiple independent sources. There is something almost unbearable about the clarity of it. He had it, the real thing. Not the crown, not the palace, not the protocol. Those things he was right to want to leave behind. The woman, the possibility, the future she was prepared to build alongside him. And he handled it the way he has handled most things that required him to choose difficulty over ease. He turned away, and then he lost it. And then he spent years constructing an explanation for why the loss was not his fault, until the photographs arrived and the explanation collapsed. The question worth sitting with is simple. Does Harry have the capacity to look at the distance between Chelsea's life and his own and accept that the choices which created it were his? Or is the pattern Levin identified in his 20s, expecting others to absorb the cost of his decisions and finding someone else to blame when they cannot, still the system he is running on? I am curious what you think. Drop it in the comments. This story does not end because Chelsea moved on. It is only now becoming fully legible. And the consequences of his choices are photographed, published, and living in Mauritius with a man who was 1 year ahead of him at Eton. Quietly devastating, entirely self-inflicted, and impossible from this particular moment to unsee.